All right, welcome to lab number 6. So what we're going to do in this lab is we're going to assign some static IP addresses to some PCs on a basic LAN. We're going to check the IP configuration to make sure that we did it correctly. And then we're going to test connectivity on that LAN utilizing the ping command and also by utilizing our test PDUs. So go ahead and open up your lab 6 start file. Once you have that open, you're going to see this. What you'll notice is that we have a switch with 4 PCs connected to it. And I've also have given it a Class C network, specifically a private Class C network, which is a 192.168.100.0/24 network. And this is the network that we are given to use. So what you're going to notice over here is that we have different tasks. So we're going to follow these in order to complete this lab. So the first thing that we want to do is assign an IP address to each of the PCs. So before we go into the configuration of each one, let's go ahead and let's just create a note and list the IP below each of the PCs. So what we'll do is we'll start with 192.168.100.10 and then I'll do /24 for the CIDR notation just for consistency. And what we'll do is we'll increment by 10. So for the next one, we will do a .20, and then for PC3, we'll increment by 10 to make this a .30, and then for PC4, same thing. So now we have our IP addresses listed below each of them. The first one is 192.168.100.10, then we go to .20, then we go to .30, and then we go to .40. So let's start off by going into PC1, and what we'll do is we'll go to desktop, we'll click on IP configuration, and for IP version 4, we're going to go ahead and type in that IP address. And simply just hit tab on your keyboard. When you hit tab, it's going to autocomplete the subnet mask. Now there's no router, so there's no default gateway, and there's no DNS server, so we'll just leave those all as zeros, and we can close that out. Now let's go ahead and open up command prompt on this machine, because the way to test our IP configuration is to utilize the ipconfig command. So if we type in ipconfig and hit enter, it's going to show us that the IP address is 192.168.100.10, and it gives us a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, which is the same thing as /24. So this tells us that our IP configuration is correct. Now the ipconfig command, this is a Windows command. If you ever want to test this on a Linux or a Mac, what you would do is you would type in ifconfig. Now this shouldn't work on this, but if you're on a Mac or a Linux machine, just type in ifconfig rather than ipconfig. Now, let's go a bit further with ipconfig. Another way to view information with ipconfig is to do a /all, and what this will do is it will give us information on every single network interface that's on this device. So it has our fast Ethernet, which is our network interface card, and then also for the Bluetooth, it shows it as well. If you did this at home and it highlights multiple different NICs, that just tells you that you have more than one network interface card on your device at home. Okay, so I digressed a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that you understood how ipconfig works. So now that we know that everything's working fine on PC1, we configured it properly, we'll go ahead and repeat the process with PC number 2. So we can also go into config and click on fast Ethernet, and we can type in the IP address here as well in Packet Tracer. So there's multiple different areas in which we can type in the IP address. We can do it in the desktop area and go to the IP configuration area, or we can do it here. It's going to do the exact same thing. So if I go ahead and click on desktop and then go to IP configuration, what we just typed in is going to show up here as well. And if we go back to desktop by clicking here to close out of it, and going to command prompt and typing in ipconfig and hitting enter. Again, we can see it right here as well. So everything is configured properly 192.168.100.20, which we see right here. So we are good for PC number 2. So we'll move on to PC 3. And again, go ahead and configure the IP configuration. Hit tab, close out of there, go to command prompt, type in ipconfig, make sure that everything looks okay, which it does, and we can go ahead and close out PC3 and go to PC4 and set up the IP configuration on our last device. We're going to do .40, we'll hit tab to autocomplete the subnet mask, everything looks good. But let's go into command prompt and run our ipconfig command. And again, we'll verify everything looks good. So we've completed steps 1 and steps 2 in the lab. Now we're going to move on to step 3. So there's 2 ways to test connectivity. We can do the ping command or we can do a test PDU. So from PC1 to PC2, we'll go ahead and we'll do a ping command. So I'll go into PC1. I'll go to command prompt, and in command prompt, I'll type in ping 192.168.100.20, hit enter, and now that I'm getting replies, this tells me that we can communicate with PC number 2. So everything is good there. The ping command worked. Now to test from PC3 to PC4, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on simulation mode first. And then I'm going to click on Add Simple PDU. And this again is nothing more than sending data from one PC to another one. So I'm going to click on PC3. Then I'm going to click on PC4. And before I kick this off, I did simulation mode so I can do it step by step. But this is also going to give you a bit of a primer on how switches learn MAC addresses. So let's go ahead and let's see how this works. So I'm going to go ahead and click the forward button. You're going to notice that this sends that data to the switch. The switch is now going to send it out to each device to see who it's destined for because, well, it hasn't communicated with any of the devices on the network yet, so it doesn't know their MAC addresses. And you'll notice that it shows an X for these 2 devices, but for PC4, it doesn't show an X because, well, that's where it should be delivered. PC4 is going to respond. The other 2 are just going to drop the data and forget about it. And it's going to go back to PC3, and PC3 has received it, and it's as simple as that. So that's a way to test connectivity and to show how the data flows in Packet Tracer. It's a really good way to do so utilizing the simulation mode. So that's going to go ahead and conclude this lab. If you wanted to continue and do this yourself, you can go ahead and try running these PDUs from PC1 to PC4, or do a ping command from PC3 to PC2 and so forth. Now, once you're done with this, to get back to real time, go ahead and click delete. That way you don't have this in there anymore and it's cleared out if you want to run more simulations. And if you want to go back to real time, then you can go back to real time and run your ping commands as well. So that's going to conclude lab number 6. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.